Welcome to Sacred Rite, the podcast where we explore holistic living, the wisdom of ancestral traditions, and the path to deepening our connection with ourselves, one another, and the earth. Together, we will embrace wellness in all its forms and rediscover the sacred callings that guide us home. I'm your host, Amber Young. In today's episode, I'm honored to tune in with Mary McCallum, the founder and clinical herbalist behind Mountain Song Medicine. Mary's story is one of returning home, both to the land of the Sierra Nevada mountains and to a life guided by the wisdom of plants. What began with her own health challenges in her early 20s has blossomed into a vibrant practice of herbal medicine making, education, and community care. Our conversation touches on so much: what it means to walk the plant path with integrity, to practice reciprocity with the land, and to honor the cycles of nature by crafting medicines in small seasonal batches. Mary shares how Mountain Song grew from Sierra Roots Wellness into a community hub for accessible herbal medicine, education, and support, especially in times of need like wildfire season. Together, we explore the importance of cycling our resources back into our communities, supporting small and local businesses, and remembering that healing is not only personal, but also collective. Mary also gives us a glimpse into her vision for Mountain Song Garden and Herb School, a project dedicated to cultivating deeper connections between people, plants, and place. And of course, you'll hear some practical herbal wisdom, simple, approachable remedies for immunity, stress relief, and everyday care, along with guidance for those who feel called to start their own home apothecary or sustainable practice. This episode is a reminder that living in rhythm with the land and with each other is not just possible, it's necessary. So pour yourself a warm cup of tea and let's step into this beautiful conversation with Mary of Mountain Song. Hi, Mary.
Hey, Amber.
Welcome to Sacred Rite podcast. I'm just so excited to be here with you. It's been a long time since we were able to tune in. We met a few years ago now, maybe like 3, 4, 5. I can't even remember, at an all-women's retreat. And that was so nourishing to meet you and learn about your work. And I'm just so inspired by you as an herbalist and a person and just how you walk in this world. And I'm sure listeners are just excited to hear about your journey. And I would love to start from the health challenges that you had in your early 20s to becoming a clinical herbalist.
Yeah, I'll dive right in. So when I was 18, I was diagnosed with endometriosis and went through pretty much the typical allopathic, Western system route, and then had some surgeries, had some relief, but I kept experiencing pain and a lot of discomfort and issues with my menstrual cycle. And then a few years later, I also got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And it just kind of felt like my whole world was crashing down on me. It definitely felt like the biggest pinnacle of like my health that I've felt up until the age that I am now, which is 35. And it really made me look at my life in a lot of different ways. It made me be a lot more present with how I was receiving care and taking care of my body. And ultimately, it pushed me to become a clinical herbalist because I was actually on track to become a part of the allopathic medical field. And I switched from going to nursing school to going to NUNM, which is a natural medicine university in Portland, Oregon. And I always like to tell people it was the best decision I ever made because it led me to where I am now. So yeah, ultimately moving through a lot of those struggles allowed me to feel like there was more options than just Western medicine for me. And of course, we all know Western medicine has its places, but I was dealing with autoimmunity and an inflammatory pathway of a disease. And there's not a lot other than surgery and medications that Western medicine can do. And I needed a holistic approach. So that led me to work with acupuncturists and naturopaths and herbalists. And I was so inspired that I switched gears and moved my career in that direction. So yeah, it was really, really an amazing choice, which I'm still grateful for today.
Wow. I hear stories similar to yours all the time. And even some people I've interviewed on this podcast have similar stories to you, suffering from chronic degenerative diseases and things showing up within their health. And it really happens in the early 20s. And I'll even say, for myself too, things started showing up for me when I was in my early 20s as well. I was in college and I started not being able to tolerate lactose, like milk products, and realized, I had to really heal my gut. And so kind of went on a health journey and kick to heal my gut. And so we are seeing this story kind of in different ways over and over and over again. And it's really leading people back to our original instructions and our original way, which is working with the earth and working with plants that can support our health holistically. And so I love that you were able to kind of listen to the whispers of your body and trust your intuition and follow a different path and not just keep going down the standard line of care in the current medical system, because it just can be such a rabbit hole to get stuck in. And it leaves people with more curiosities and more pain and more like discomfort and like medical anxiety, and all sorts of things can come up when you're kind of stuck in that route. So I love that you were able to, feel the inspiration from all these different practitioners you were working with and kind of be guided towards your path of studying naturopathic medicine and herbs and all of that stuff. So that's really cool. Mary, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And you live in like the Sierra Nevada mountains, and you used to have, like when I first met you, you had your company. What was it called? It was Sierra Roots Wellness, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so now you've shifted gears and you've evolved Sierra Roots Wellness to Mountain Song. Can you talk a little bit about that evolution with listeners?
Well, brief backstory is that I did grow up here in the Sierra Nevada mountains. I grew up in Plumas County and Sierra County and spent some time away for school, but ultimately came back to be with my husband and my now bonus son. And when I came back and I was still studying herbalism and starting my business and starting to make medicines, I really felt like Sierra Roots was the best evolution of who I was at that time, literally rooted back in the Sierras and expressing my passion through these medicines. And our family has, done a big 360 since then, not too much with place, but we moved from the outskirts of Reno, Nevada to closer to Truckee, which is in the Lake Tahoe Basin on Washoe land, and purchased raw land almost 6 years ago. And during that process, and this process that we're still in of really finding home again here on this land and welcoming ourselves and the animals and the plants and all the beings and integrating that into our lives, the land really was the one that told me. I was actually on a walk one day and I was hearing Mountain Song, and I'm like, why are you telling me that? And I realized that there was a lot of also, of course, like personal shifts that were happening, big shifts around us living in a tiny home and then now having a home, like a real home for the first time in 5 years together that we can live in all as a family. So Mountain Song has, directly come from the land, but really has felt like an all-encompassing harmony to our relationship and my relationship to not only this land, but these lands that I have spent many years since childhood and now through my adulthood getting to know, holding in such deep reverence and prayer. And yeah, just really excited about to be in communion with them as an herbalist and as a human. So yeah, I'll stop there. I could keep going, but
Please do. I'm really on the edge of my seat wanting to hear your whole story. So that's just amazing. What an incredible evolution into Mountain Song, and that, you heard that from the land and you just listened. And sometimes when we stop and we pause and we listen, the land can speak so much, right? And so it seems like your, Mountain Song is like, because you've been so deeply connected to the Sierra Nevada foothills and the mountains, that land connection is really rooted and tapped into your herbal philosophy and your practices. So, how has growing up and living in Sierra Nevadas shaped your herbal philosophy and your practices?
Yeah, great question. And I feel like lots of things, but like the first thing I think about is the resiliency that the plants and I have also had to really embody as a practitioner, as a person, because the land and the way it moves is wild. And the plants here, especially, like they have to endure pretty intense seasons sometimes. Whether that's winter, right, being buried under 10 feet of snow for months on end, or hot summers, or wild rainstorms and thunderstorms, to right now, like it's super dry and we're in the windy kind of season. So I really think, something that's so unique to this area and to people that have to adapt to it or that are adapting to it, right? Not have to, but it's also by choice, is embodying that spirit of resiliency. And like sometimes that's really hard, just like it's really hard for the plants to be living, at 10,000 feet and just getting rocked by storms. But I feel a lot of that like in myself, especially we live off grid. We do have solar power, but that is our only power source. And then we have a wood stove for heat. So yeah, there's winters that have been really wild and hard. And then there's, off grid things that happen that just make our life a lot different than the way people live. And I'm really grateful for some of that. And sometimes it's also like overwhelming when it's happening. Yeah. And then I think so much of it is also shaped by the plants themselves and the medicines that I make. The plants that are just already here and exist here, which, a lot of the time in herbalism and as herbalists, like we think of where we live and the plants that surround us as some of our best allies because we are so closely connected with them, right? Otherwise, a lot of those allies are plants from our ancestry. So I think about kind of the pillars of those Sierra Nevada plants are things like all of the conifer trees, since we don't have a lot of trees that, well, in the foothills we do, but like where I live, we have aspen trees. Those are the only trees that lose their leaves and change color. Otherwise, we have like the pines and the firs and cedars and juniper. And then I think about like all the root medicines, Oshala and Lomatium and rose hips and elderberries and so much yarrow. But yeah, these medicines that are so wise and have such impeccable healing powers and can be accessible. But that has really shaped the philosophies of Mountain Song too, and how I practice as far as which herbs are, which medicines I'm going to offer in which season, and also what medicines I want to work with and that also speak to me and feel ethical and loving choices to bring into my practice and to offer to the community, and also provide education because, as you know very well, there's a lot of that happening continually with plants and herbs. Most of that is through the supplement industry and through these big fads, but I always want to make sure that my relationship with the plants feels sustainable and reciprocal, that I'm working with them in a way that feels like I'm feeding their life source, and then I'm also sharing their life force with people that want to experience that. So
That's beautiful. You talk about walking the plant path with integrity and practicing reciprocity with the land. And what does that look like in your daily work with the land that you live on and with the herbs that you use?
yeah, I'll start by talking about wild herbs and then talk about, some other echoes of what that looks like in my life and practice. With wild medicines, of course, I'm working with these medicines in season. So for those listeners that are maybe here and listening now, like there's certain herbs that are available depending on just where I live and what's in season. Like right now, we are entering into fall or autumn. And I've been harvesting lots of elderberries and mugwort, and soon I'll start harvesting root medicines and rose hips after we get those cold snaps, because that really helps to concentrate those amazing constituents into the plants. And those are just really amazing plants. Having a direct relationship with the plants and speaking to the wild medicines, for example, knowing when those medicines are going to be at their peak and it's the best time to harvest them, and never taking too much. I try to only take about 10%, and that is from a stand that is prolific. So I actually was talking about this yesterday when I was harvesting elders with a friend, and I was explaining that there was 40 elders across this mountainside, but if there was only two, then I wouldn't be harvesting from those most likely, because those are the only two there. So we really want to protect those resources and give those elder trees more of a chance to thrive and survive versus just taking the resources. So yes, taking 10%, harvesting from stands that feel prolific and like I'm not going to be depleting. And then, going back to the relationship of really getting to know the plant. I think there is this really exciting energy that happens when we start to work with plants or we start to learn about them, where we're like, oh my gosh, I want to get out there and I want to harvest A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you can just go down the line. But I can definitely speak from experience, before I became an herbalist and even now, where it's like I have learned a lot of lessons from the plants, and it's so important to really take time to sit with them, to understand, to ask other, elders and mentors questions about them. And a lot of that is like, maybe if there's something I really want to bring into the apothecary or medicine I really want to make, that I'm going to make that for myself and my family first, or I'm going to go sit or walk with that plant daily for a few weeks to really ask, is this right? Does this feel right? I just think that there's so much more than just being in the mindset of, I want to harvest, I want to use this, I want to take it. When we develop that relationship with the plant, it feels more giving and receiving than just taking and using. And that also echoes so much into what I believe outside of using the wild medicines, which is supporting local farmers and supporting other local purveyors. And I'm really big on that with my life in general. Anybody that knows me is like, I'm going to call Mary and ask her, where should I buy my half a cow this year? Where can I get raw milk? Where can I, get local eggs? Where can I get this? And there's honestly nothing that enthralls me more than herbs, than knowing where my food sources come from and having direct relationship with those people. And a lot of those farmers, I'm using those ingredients in my apothecary. So, the honey that I'm putting in my medicines, the fruit that I'm occasionally putting in my seasonal jams or shrubs, and the herbs that I'm using in my herbal salts. So all of those things, I think it's so important to just have as much of a direct relationship. And then if, there's going to be things that you can't source locally. So how am I making those informed choices as a herbalist, as a businesswoman? And I always say that I source from places that I would always feed my family and friends. So I like to think about that as that's the ripple effect of everybody. I want everybody to have the best medicines all the time. And last thing, this is a long one, but I love this question, is this just leads me also into, what we're doing here on Mountain Song on the land, which is also what we call this land now, is moving towards having a schoolhouse to educate folks here on the land and bring people here for retreats and gatherings all around herbs, but also ancestral skills, and really just anything that feels like this land wants to hold. And also growing my own herbs. That's the second part of the school, is having high tunnels here. So we have our first high tunnel that we put up this summer. So we're now learning a lot and growing some more of our own plants here, because we're up at 6,000 feet. We have really wild weather. We had freezing temperatures and snow in almost every summer season this summer. So we've learned a lot about growing in the high Sierras, and the high tunnels is definitely the game changer. So yes.
Thank you. That's so exciting about the high tunnels. And I've just been following you crowdfunding and sourcing that. And I love to. I want to really touch in on this because I'm very similar to you in this. My husband and I, we always support local. We buy a whole cow and from a local farmer. We always shop at the farmers markets if we're not growing it ourselves. We have a farmer up the street named Willow, Sundance Farms. It's my favorite little farm stand. That's something I miss too. I lived on Vashon Island. There's like a farm stand everywhere, like farm stands literally everywhere, and just honor system. And I just love that, like that trust in your community and not
Mm-hmm.
worry so much about the money aspect and it's going to come to you. And if somebody's like taking something, then that's something they might really need, right? So like just kind of trusting your community and in that way. But we have one farm stand up where we live, and it's like, maybe a mile away from our house. I'd like to bike there with my daughter, but that just like sustains us all through the summer. So our cow sustains us, and then our like shopping local. And I think it's so important too, like you're saying, like you want everything to be with the most care, like grown in a way with the most care, harvested in a way with the most care. Like energy is also something that matters when it comes to growing food, harvesting food, and all of that. So we know the local food is going to be give us the most vitality in our body and give us the most strength and support because it's literally from the land that you're living on. And
Mm-hmm.
nothing is going to give you the most vitality than things grown here on the land that you're living on because your body is living in that with the same air and all of that. So it all has a ripple effect. So if we can
Mm-hmm.
source things as local as possible from small businesses, we vote with our dollar. So, we have to make these informed choices and go, hey, I'd actually rather, instead of me going on Amazon and buying, like, let's just pretend like a tallow balm sold on Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be the highest quality thing you could buy. The highest quality thing you can buy is going to be somebody local who's making a local tallow balm, who's
Mm-hmm.
getting it from a local farm, the tallow from a local farm, rendering it down themselves. Like nothing's going to be as high as a quality as if people are doing it on this small scale. And I think that's where like we can really come together and support each other and our creativity and in making things and not just these big corporations just making a ton of money and like doing things like totally out of line with integrity and all of that stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
voting with your dollar is so important. And Mary, I love that about you. And yeah, just calling that forward to our brothers and sisters listening out there that if we can afford to do so, putting those resources into our community because then it comes back to us too. If we can keep it all going, it's more sustainable.
Yeah, and so much of that can be done, like you said, with trades too, and like that trust, which I also love. And just like a last, just little like glitter for this part of the conversation is like, I think a lot of the pushback I get from people is like, oh, like buying local produce is too expensive, or this is too expensive, like so that they go to right the middleman or to another larger corporation to purchase things, but I really think it's actually not that much more expensive. It is sometimes when you're buying in bulk, right? Like you're talking about buying a whole cow. But if you break that up over the course of a year or however long it takes your family to move through that, and even if sometimes it is a little bit more expensive, to me, it's worth it. But I think when we really compare dollar to dollar, thinking about the rising cost in food just since the beginning of 2020, which I know has gone up about 30%, buying organic carrots at the grocery store versus buying organic carrots from your farmer down the road, like you're talking about, you're probably going to get them cheaper from your farmer. And sometimes if they're 20 cents more, I'm happy because I want to support the farmer down the road. I know exactly where my money is going. And that is just like the best gift, and vice versa. Like, when people support me, like in my business, I'm like, my money is going to keep the wheels turning and keep Mountain Song going and buying more bottles and making sure I have all my supplies. But it's also feeding my family. And it's also doing those things that are just so basic and essential to keep us all thriving. So it is a really beautiful full circle when we think about it that way. Also, the food always tastes better.
Way better. Oh my gosh. Way better. I think in a
Yeah.
different episode, I was talking about how store-bought berries gross me out, like so gross me out. I just can't even. In fact, I was with my daughter today and there was like some sort of strawberry out. We went to Costco. We buy some of our like staples at Costco, just like some
Yeah.
of the bulk stuff. And there was like strawberries out where they were dipping it with something else. And she was like, oh, I want that strawberry. I was like, no way. said, sorry, honey, that's a pesticide filled strawberry. That's on the dirty dozen. We're not going to eat that strawberry. And she, like, we're going to eat the local strawberries. And unfortunately, the season's done. Right. So
Yeah.
what we can do is like during berry season is like freeze the berries and we go for frozen berries, in the off season when we don't have access to local stuff. But yeah, store-bought berries, I just get it gives just me the full on ick. And just like even organic berries, these are like berries from the co-op. It's still grown in such a bad way. The organic practices that they use, it's just like, they could even label it as organic and it only has to be like 70%. So that 30% is not
Yeah.
organic and it's just like really poor practices. So it's just so much better to support, the local farm, go to the farmer's market, buy all the berries when they're in season, freeze them in your freezer if you have a deep freezer. And I know some of the things we're talking about is like not everybody has that access, right? Not everybody has deep freezers. Not everybody can buy a whole cow up front. But like you said, like in the long run, it ends up being cheaper later. We get like our meat lasts like 2 years and it's $5 a pound, which is like way cheaper than you can get things at the store. So sometimes you just have to kind of make these decisions for your family if you're able to. And maybe people can get inspired if they can afford to do so. Buy a deep freezer, start to freeze some things, start to, even like in the growing season, wherever you live, harvest that fresh food, freeze it, whatever you need to do to like get the most, again, vitality because it tastes way better. Because even those store-bought carrots, I'm like at the co-op, oh, grown in California. I'm like, I live in Washington. I don't want a California carrot. I want a Washington carrot. I want a carrot from my garden, actually, because that tastes just the best. Fresh, pulled, washed, eaten. So good. Nothing compares. So
Absolutely.
I'm with you there.
Yeah. And people can start really small. And this just like ties us back into the herbal conversation, right? And like, I love that we're talking about this because it's not just things in isolation. Like, we don't say, oh, we're going to start learning about herbs and I want to bring herbs into my family. And that's the one thing that's going to help us. As a clinical herbalist, I look at the whole picture, right? When I'm supporting people, when I'm supporting families, and it's like, okay, herbs, food, lifestyle things that are as simple as going for walks and getting enough rest, getting good sunlight and drinking good water, right? It's like all of these things. And I think with food and herbs, we are really thinking about them in seasons. And I am such a big proponent of seasonal herbalism and just getting more and more attuned to that. So like you were saying with the food, well, it's like, okay, maybe I don't have a chest freezer, but maybe I can buy a case of ground beef and I can buy a 40-pound bag of organic rice from the farmer that lives, for me, that would be like in Chico, California, a few hours away. And then when strawberries are in season, I can go down to First Rain Farm in Nevada City and harvest as many strawberries as I can and blueberries and freeze them and have those. And herbs are the same, right? It's like right now I'm in the elderberry time and I'm like harvesting, going to all my spots all around the Sierras, which is several hour journeys, and I'm freezing them, or you could dry them. And if you're harvesting other herbs from your garden or herbs you can buy at the farmer's market, then you can be drying those or preserving them. And there is just something to be said about this in connection to the medicines and connection to our ancestry. And it's also really about slowing down. We move so fast in today's world. And some people, if I said that to them, they'd be like, what do you mean? Like, I can't slow down. I have 3 kids. My kid goes to school an hour away. I've got this and that and my work and blah, 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 blah. But it's like, we have to be able to take these little moments, whatever they are, in all of our crazy, busy, wild lives and find time to slow down. So maybe for some people, that is like making time to go for that sunset walk, or making time to go to the farmer's market every weekend, or making time to make that herbal tea, every season, or that herbal syrup that's going to support their family. But I think this is really the ultimate healing goal of coming back to ourselves, coming back to our families, and coming back to connection with the land and the seasons. Yeah, it's magic.
It truly is. And I want to go into the clinical herbalism thing because I think it would be good to get some listeners clear on what exactly a clinical herbalist is. And I loved how you talked about all those components that you look at as a clinical herbalist for people's health, right? Because typically, people go and maybe they're on the allopathic path and it's not working out and it's just, failing them. So then they seek, okay, let's go to a naturopathic doctor. Okay, they're going through that. Maybe they can't figure it out. Okay, I'll see an acupuncturist. They'll start kind of going down the line. And one of the last things to actually be sought out a lot of the time is clinical herbalism.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want you to talk about this because people don't really know, right? They don't know about it. They don't know that can be a path and they don't really know what it is. And so I think it would be great to give some clarity of what exactly that is and how do you work with your clients?
So, what a clinical herbalist is, I should also preface that there's so many different ways you can become an herbalist. You don't have to become a clinical herbalist. And especially in the country that we live in here, the US, there is no regulation for herbalists. There is in some other places. So, you can actually pretty much call yourself whatever you want as an herbalist. If I really wanted to, I could be a whimsical fairy tree climbing herbalist. And that could, but there are some more specific trainings for herbalists, people that really get excited, want to get on the path. And one of those is clinical herbalist. Some other examples could be a community herbalist. But as a clinical herbalist, I and others that follow this path are really excited about really having as much understanding of the body. So we learn a lot of I actually have a pre-med degree, not required as a clinical herbalist, but that is also a lot of what you learn when you are continuing on your herbal education as a clinical herbalist. So you go a lot more deeper into anatomy and physiology. You learn a lot about different disease pathways. So a lot of this is the East meets West, right? We learn about contraindications for medications and working with herbs. Then with that, we're learning about all the different systems of Western herbalism, Chinese herbalism, Ayurvedic medicine, and really bringing that into our practices in whichever way we want to express that to support people from a holistic approach. And what that looks like for me in my practice, for example, is I work with clients one-on-one, and it could be anything from acute to chronic illness. So acute would be something more like, I'm sick. Can you help me? I've been struggling with this respiratory virus. I have this lingering cough. I'm so congested. In that situation, I'm able to get an intake and an understanding. We go through all the body systems. I get a health history, and I make formulas for just what is acutely happening right here and now. And then those that have something maybe more chronic or long-term, something more long-term that's happening in their bodies, that is going to be a much longer intake, usually up to 2 hours. And I'm really getting an in-depth look of when did this start? What are the factors that could be contributing to the disharmony and, your body being out of balance? I don't see clients in person anymore, but when I did, I was doing pulse diagnosis and tongue diagnosis. So now I'm more asking questions. As clinical herbalists, we really focus, and I work more in Western herbalism, on tissue states and understanding why tissue states are out of sorts. So I'm asking questions to try to understand what's happening in the organ systems and the tissues of the body so that I can choose the right herbs that are going to be supportive to that person and what they're experiencing. And also then making nutritional recommendations and lifestyle recommendations. And sometimes I also work with supplements as well, but it's usually more on the lines of essential nutrients and minerals that may be missing from the diet. Herbalists are not allowed to diagnose or treat or cure. So that's part of it. But, I can look again, more at the patterns, right? Look at somebody's constitution and really try and find what is going to be best for them. And sometimes that takes some, some work as far as trying things and then you find like the perfect herbs. And that also then changes. Like we find herbs that support us for some time, and then that might change after we go through something else in our lives. But overall, bringing it back to center, yeah, clinical herbalism is really about having an in-depth understanding of what is happening in the body and being able to offer our clients resources and support that feels accessible to where they are in their lives. And, it may seem overwhelming for some people, but sometimes it's as simple as like, I'm like, okay, you're going to have your tea, you have your tincture formula. Part of your right, like your suggestion is to go for a walk every day or take a bath every day, right? Go sit in the sun. And then yeah, the nutritional recommendations follow, right? And that's usually more adding more nourishment to than taking away and creating more restriction, because like you mentioned earlier, like a lot of that medical trauma with people is so much restriction and then so many medications or whatever things. And it just shuts people's bodies down and it shuts people's nervous systems off. And I am all about bringing more vitality to the body. And sometimes that is little ways, but they can be very profound in the long term.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. I'm feeling like inspired to finish my clinical herbal program that I started like 5 years ago. I kid you not. I enrolled in Sage Apopum School of Evolutionary Herbalism, and
Nice.
I've gotten through a lot of content, but I've totally taken a huge hiatus and pause, and I need to like really restart, go through that whole thing because I really have a high interest in clinical herbalism myself and supporting people on that path. But yeah, I'm just now feeling inspired. Like, you need to get back and finish that. And some of the things you're saying is reminding me of what Saja has, taught me. And so I'm like, okay, wrap it up, girlfriend. It's hard, being a mother, a teacher, being a wife and everything. Little things can get in the way of some of the path and dreams that I have. But this is inspiring me. So thank you, Mary, for doing that always with all the work that you do. And I want to talk about Mountain Song shop model. So you have this seasonal 5 day a month shop model. And like, how do you balance the freshness and sustainability and like client connection in that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. I think it's some kind of magic because sometimes it's wild, but I just love having different facets of my business. I love being able to support people one on one. I love making medicine. I grew up in the kitchen with my mom and my grandmothers. So cooking and making medicines is like soul food for me. Yeah, and then education is another part of it as well. But it's always changing and it's evolution. So just like you were sharing, like with your journey, it's like someday I may not want to make the medicines anymore. But for now, I love doing all the things and I just try to keep it all balanced, which yeah, leads us to more about the shop model for Mountain Song. And when I first switched from Sierra Roots to Mountain Song, I knew that there had to be some type of shift with how I was opening my shop up to sell products on my website every month, because in the past I used to just be shipping all the time. And that made me feel like a crazy person. So for those of you that have small businesses, I'm like, I don't know how you ship all the time. And also being a woman and being cyclical, it's been very nourishing for me to be able to make this choice for my business. So right now, my shop is open 5 days a month, and I plan that around my life and my cycle. So I know when I'm going to have the energy to be making the medicines and sending the medicines out and harvesting all the things. And this really allows me to show up the best that I can in all of the ways in my life and business. And yeah, so it's usually about in the middle of the month that the shop is open. And during those 5 days, you can purchase anything that's open for business. That could be like, I also have gift cards that are available all the time, all of my seasonal medicines. Sometimes there's classes and other things available. But I try to do a seasonal drop each month. Now that's kind of changing to more of a seasonal drop per season. So for example, for fall, which we're coming up on now, that's looking like, instead of me releasing new things each month, because that was becoming, again, I'm like, wow, I don't think I can sustain this in the long term, especially with the rising costs of bottles and labels and things like that. So right now I'm getting ready for fall to release like fire cider and to release my propolis throat spray and to release fresh batches of elderberry syrup and teas for the fall season and other things that are just really aligned with what our body needs during this time. And that is allowing me to share what is most local, seasonal, and also for the community and beyond to have those medicines that can support them and their families throughout that time of the year. And yeah, also, again, going back to sustainability, just that it allows for me to like make things, because I do make things in small batches, but now I can focus on making these seasonal batches of things and being okay with when we sell out of that, then we're sold out until next year. And that's also part of it too, just like with the foods or the berries that are in season, like we're talking about. And so that's, yeah, more reason to just be connecting with those medicines in each season and how to access them.
I love that shop model because you're right. It is a lot of work to ship and have a small business and be shipping all the time. And I could see how that could drive you nutty as well. And, I sell some medicines myself. I don't have a website for it. That's something that's always been on, again, my to-do list, but I'll do these random releases on my Instagram. And so then I'll just like, it's kind of like that model in a way, but it's not like, 5 days a month. It's just like this random, whenever I say I have these things that I just made these like a big old batch of this or a big old batch of that, then I'll have this release, then I'll write all the names down, then I'll ship it kind of all at once. And I could see how if somebody was ordering all the time, just sporadically, that I'd be like, oh no, I have to do another trip to the post office. I have to do another thing here. And it just ends up being like a lot more work if that's coming in, if orders are coming in kind of sporadic like that versus like all at once. Just, of course, it's like a huge prep for you, right? To like get all these orders together and organize and then take it all in. But then once it's out, you're like, okay, great, reset for the next month. And I love that you're following your cycle. This is also a call forward for all the women listening to really work more with our cycles and be considering that with the work that we're doing because it's, we have the most energy during our ovulation period, in our follicular phase, we're like really energized and like that luteal phase hits and we're like a little bit slower and we might need more time and just like, yeah, kind of going through the 4 seasons within that monthly season, that lunar cycle of our moon time is just like, yeah, it's so supportive. And I love that you're nourishing yourself in that way because at the beginning of our conversation, you talked about your endometriosis. And so I feel like this is a way that you can really like caretake yourself and your womb and your whole body. And that's something like in our current way that we live in modern day society of like go, 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 do. It's not thoughtful of women at all. It's actually like the opposite. It's very much a man's cycle of like do all the time. And it's like that's just not how women operate. And that's why so many people are getting burned out. And another reason why so many women are having issues come up, whether that's issues with their wombs and their cycles or just other degenerative diseases manifesting in the body and mysterious ailments coming up for people. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with just like how we're operating as a society and we're not thinking about women. And if we centered women more, then our society would thrive way more. So
yeah, I mean, I 1,000% agree with everything that you just shared. And it has been a constant learning process for me as a woman, but it's also been very liberating, and I'm not perfect, right? I don't do it perfect either, even though I try so hard. So there's going to be times where I'm like, I planned it for what I thought was perfect. And then I have to work harder. But it is really, it feels like such a deep prayer in my life to, and for my business to not get to that point where I feel so pushed over the edge and I feel so burnt out, especially as a woman, where I can't hold space for my family. I can't show up for my stepson. I can't be present with my husband, and ultimately with myself. So I think there's always ways that we can try to work with that a little bit. And this has been, a really beautiful way for me to try things differently and constantly be trying to reinvent. So I'm really grateful for the community that I have thus far and the followers and the support and their understanding of the shop model and how I've changed things. And it feels good to just be always trying to do things a little differently than what's expected of us, especially in this very masculine society. So I'm honored to be moving through it. And I I was almost said marching through it, but I'm like, no, it's not. It's like moving,
Dancing through it.
be dancing through it. Or not like the male, would be marching through it. Like we're dancing, we're singing through it. We are bringing in those, softer ways, right? And those little moments of slowing down. So, yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I want to talk about like education and access now. You offer medicine making videos and Q&As and just like this whole vault of herbal recipes. And what inspired your approach to herbal education? And how do you offer like, things available to your customers? How do you make it accessible? All of that stuff. Would love to hear.
Well, for, those of you that are listening that may be local-ish, again, the goal is to have in-person education here. And I will seasonally offer classes kind of throughout the greater Sierras, like from Reno to the foothills. But the goal is really to eventually be able to bring people here in person. And then the other half of that is my online course, which is called Building Your Home Apothecary, which just has felt like the most fun and exciting part of being able to connect with people from all over. And again, it really goes back to like the heart of just finding simple ways to bring herbs into your life throughout the seasons. And Building Your Home Apothecary is 20 different modules that covers everything from like herbs for pregnancy, herbs for kids, herbs for first aid. This last month, we've wrapped up herbs for pain, herbs for sleep. And with each module, you get a pretty in-depth like PDF of herbal support and holistic strategies for each module, as well as a medicine making video with yours truly for one of the recipes for that section. Then we have a live Q&A every month, which is just kind of the way of like us all getting together on Zoom as a community, and folks can ask questions, or sometimes we just go down tangents talking about our gardens or talking about our future gardens or things you want to do, all in the name of herbs. And it's a lovely community. And yes, with the program, there is lifetime access. There's also payment plan options. So you can choose. I've tried to make it as accessible as possible in those ways. And some of like the future hopes is that I will offer shorter courses as other options to Building Your Home Apothecary, and then have, some in-person offerings and maybe retreats. But for those of you that are like, I don't know where to start. I don't know if I want to do clinical herbalism or go to like, right, a longer herb program, like something like Building Your Home Apothecary is a great way to just empower you to bring more herbs into your kitchen and your home and make recipes with your friends and family. And it's a lot of fun.
That's amazing, Mary. When you launched that, I was so stoked for you. I was so excited. I'm like, what a great idea. How cute is this? How amazing is this? And your videos are so high quality. And you're just such an amazing facilitator and teacher. So very cool. And with that lifetime access, you're just always having these Q&As. So no matter when you buy it, you can just hop on one of those Q&As and that's available for you.
Exactly. Yeah. There's also an option for you to get a certificate if you complete like all the hours. that are a part of the program. So that's basically, there's some like optional homework options. But as far as the Q&As, you can do the Q&As for years if you want. And there will always be one every month. And yeah, it might take you 2 years to go through it. You also may not care about the certificate. The certificate is mostly just to give you hours and credit if you want to go to another herbal school, another program that requires a certain amount of hours to complete. But yeah, we are almost through our first year of it. So we're about to launch the next round. And that's how it will kind of go through. It'll start every winter with module 1 and then move through the seasons. I've kind of tailored it to that so that the modules also have to do with the seasons as well. But yeah, you're welcome to hop on the videos anytime. And I also encourage people too, like if it's like, yeah, partnership, like my husband and wife, like they want to do, or husband and wife, they want to do the program. Like, I'm like, they can do it together, or if it's like mother and daughter, like I really want it, like the mom really wants to do it, but I'm going to make all these recipes with my daughter, like have your daughter pop on the calls or like, so I just want it to feel familial and communal in those ways as well. And like everybody can have the access to it within the family.
What a great idea, Mary. Thanks for holding down that work. And yeah, something that you do too is like you work with some nonprofits and community groups, right? Making herbal medicine more accessible to people, especially in times of wildfire or community need. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, every quarter, I do some type of large medicine donation, and that's primarily local. And right now, it kind of ebbs and flows with the need as far as what's happening in the communities and surrounding communities. But like right now, I've mostly been working with the tribe, the Washoe tribe. So I have direct connections and ways that they will, communicate with me throughout the season and say, okay, we're going to need these medicines come fall, or, the elders are asking for this. Can you make this? And I really just love giving back in that way. And sometimes that also looks like education as well. I'll be asked to come in and teach a class how to make elderberry syrup or how to make a salve. And I will offer my time as a part of that gift as well. And knock on wood, we've been pretty like blessed with not having a big wildfires season, like very, very close to us. There's plenty of wildfires going on all over the place on the West Coast. But when there is fires more in my direct community, or just devastating things where I get asked to support, then I always try to support as much as I can. And sometimes that also looks like other herbalists that do more mutual aid work than I will donate like, 100 1-ounce tinctures or 100 salves or things like that. So yeah, I started out Theory Roots Wellness doing almost entirely mutual aid work, which was so nourishing and fulfilling. But now we live a lot more remotely, which makes it hard for me to be doing so much work I was mostly working with houseless populations and with the local tribe in the city of Reno. So now it's more, how can I still support these different communities? And yeah, it ebbs and flows depending on where the need is. But I really love giving back in that way. And it feels like, again, just the good way to be moving forward. And it all comes back. So
Yes, it surely does. You give so generously and abundantly, Mary. Thanks for doing that for our community members and families in need. It's so important to have people like you willing to donate their time, donate the medicines, help support people in their education and learning, like so you can really like continue passing this wisdom down, because it is like ancient, right? It's something that you've learned through your teachers, but really like, herbalism has been around since the dawn of humanity. People have always worked with herbs and plants. And so if you can pass on that wisdom and knowledge that in the history of being human on the earth, attempts of like totally dismantling or getting rid of it, or like with what talking about like witch burnings, these witches witches, right? Or herbalists and medicine women. And, there's a point where it's like, okay, an eradication of these ways for more control. And so I love seeing how people are really coming back to the old ways, because that is like something that we can do that will shift paradigms and change the future for the better. So thanks for that work. And yeah, just like by meeting you at the retreat that we went to, just hearing your passion about, social justice issues and people's rights and all of that. I can just feel that in your work. So yeah, definitely support Mary. She's doing so much to hold it down for everybody, and yeah, support her shop, support her work. Yeah. So I want to talk about another way that more listeners can support you if they're feeling the call. And that's like the campaign that you launched to Mountain Song Gardens and Herb School.
Yes, it's a mouthful.
Yes, yes. But what would be the heart and purpose of that project, and how can listeners support that project?
Yeah. Well, I mean, supporting me and the business in any way is supporting that, because it's just keeping that driving force and integrity of the continuation of Mountain Song and bringing us closer together. Right now, I do have a raffle going, for example, and I'll probably do a few more things like that throughout the year. So if you missed this one, then there'll be other opportunities. But like the raffle, for example, is a way that people can make a donation, and then you also enter into basically winning a raffle of your choice is kind of a fun way to fundraise. And we're going to be doing an in-person fundraiser for the schoolhouse specifically in the spring. And yeah, there will be a way to donate and support if you can't make it in person. But just being a part of the community, signing up for my email list, purchasing products, like all those things all support Mountain Song. And yes, the school and garden project coming to fruition. And I just would be grateful, to be witnessed by all of you in the process. And it's kind of fun, receiving my emails. And that's why I tell people it's like, it's not always just about the herbs. Like sometimes there's a high tunnel update or something about we also have a homestead and we have animals here that are a part of our life. So then you might see a picture of a baby goat or, some kittens or something like that. So just feels like you're part of the family.
Love, 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 love. And this is kind of like a sideways question, but I've noticed that you've been getting into beekeeping, and I want to know about that whole process. It's something that excites me so much. And yeah, how's that been going? And how is that like giving back to your land? And like, yeah, talk a little bit about your bees and the other animals you keep on your homestead.
Yes, I love my bees so much. I only get to spend half the year with them. So it feels like I have to squeeze in all the precious moments because they go back down to the valley in the winter time. I hope someday that they can stay the whole winter, but I haven't felt confident enough yet where we live with them having enough of a food source, even if with their own honey, which is what the bees survive when they can't go out and get nectar and pollen. But I love the bees. The bees have been incredible teachers and incredible mentors through a lot of, just the ebbs and flows of life. And I learned about beekeeping from some women in Hawaii. And I really wanted to learn from women, and because most of the beekeepers around me are all men, and I've learned amazing things from them too. But it was really wonderful to learn from them and have that kind of be my initiation. And beekeeping in Hawaii is very different than beekeeping in the high Sierras. So I think the bees, without saying too much, but we could do a whole other episode on this, the bees have just taught me so much about life. And they are an incredible, incredible being that really knows how to survive through a lot. And also, like last year, I lost both my hives that were in the valley, so they also have taught me a lot about kind of the surrender and the natural process of death, and also how sometimes things are just beyond what we can control. But so part of me having the bees here is a personal passion. And also part of that is bringing more pollinators to our perennial gardens and to the high tunnels, and making sure that it's balanced so that the honeybees are not out competing with the natural pollinators. So I love that there's plenty of food here for all of them, and I see them all together in harmony. And other animals that we have besides the bees. Oh, I should also just add about the bees is, yeah, I don't currently harvest any of the products from the hives. We had a few years back when we had more hives, we harvested like a little bit of honey and some of the propolis and some of the wax. But I mostly work with other beekeepers that are beekeeping on larger scales that have more access to the products from the hives. But I try to save everything for my bees because they need it. It's part of their survival. And that's how they continue to create life and feed their brood, feed the babies. So, yeah, that's the honeybees. We also have 4 dairy goats, 2 mamas and 2 babies. And they're lovely and wonderful. There's the newer additions. And then I have about 40 birds. I have about 30 ducks and 10 chickens right now. And those supply our family with eggs. And yeah, the goats, I milk the goats every morning. So we have beautiful fresh milk that is also getting incorporated into future products. The hint word is soap. I'll just say looking forward to making goat milk soap as a part of Mountain Song. And we also have 4 livestock guardian dogs, and we have 4 cats. And I think that's it. And I'm feeling very content with all of the other beings we have. Yes, but the animals are a part of the magic. And yeah, we love homesteading. That's definitely my other passion besides herbs is being with all the animals.
Absolutely. Oh, beautiful. I love goats. I love honeybees. I love it all. Duck eggs are so delicious. Oh my gosh, they're just so rich. And we have chickens, but I would like to get some ducks because I just love eating duck eggs. And of course, I love our chicken eggs. I'm so blessed. They're just amazing additions to our little homestead that we've got going here, but would definitely love to expand all of that, and feeling really inspired by the goats you're working with and the honeybees. And I know, like, I've taken some coursework and classes on keeping honeybees and learning about just the lives of honeybees and apothecary and all of that stuff. But I know how hard it is too. It's hard out there for beekeepers. It's really hard, and it's really hard to tend bees, and you do deal with a lot of death and a lot of parasites and other things that can wipe out colonies. And it's just kind of a struggle everywhere. And yeah, I'm learning a lot about that. And so I've been apprehensive because I know there's going to be a lot of loss too. And I'm curious, like, so your bees go down to the valley. Are you working with like a local person who kind of moves them? And yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend, and he is actually the one that I purchased most of the honey for Mountain Song. And so he has more hives that are at the end of the valley that we live in. So I got my bees from him years ago. And then the last 2 hives that I lost were from him. So then I have a new hive this year. And I just think that honeybees and animals in general, like farm animals, they teach you so much about life and death. And it's really hard sometimes, but it's so important. And the plants teach us that too, right? The seed, right? The seeds that are under the soil will not germinate and sprout until they have the perfect living conditions. And that is so much to be said just for life in general. And yeah, there's like so much joy that can come from raising animals and homesteading. And then there's big lessons. So I think it's like anything that we care for deeply, just like our children, we give them the best life, we give them the best environment, we give them the best food, all the things, the best that we can do. It's like, I think of that the same for our animals, but there's going to be certain things that are just out of our control. And sometimes
Absolutely.
it's about letting go a little bit and then trying again.
Yeah. And just like honoring the loss and being in that grief, at moving through it and not getting stuck in it. Because, yeah, I remember when we first got chickens years ago, we had our first loss was a coyote taking one of our girls. And I just remember being so sad. You raise them from little chicks, and then it's like they're finally producing eggs. And then just like one night, it's like something can get in and just kind of like cause death. And And at this point now, we've lost so many chickens. I have lost count of how many deaths we've had. Honestly, I just like literally, it's got to be like 20 plus birds at this point that we've lost. And from various reasons, whether it's our own dog, getting to them. We have a bird dog. So it's just in her nature. She's the hunter dog, she's gone to hunting school and all of that stuff. And so we can't fault her for like, if we miscommunicated, if the girls were out roaming, like if our chickens were out roaming and my husband and I miscommunicate or forget to tell the other one, oh, don't let the dog out when you open the door, because we're so used to just being like, go run free, animals. But oh, oops, the chickens are out. And so sometimes things can just get wiped so easily, like our own animals, predators just come, they'll find a way into trying to get to any animal that you keep. And so yeah, we've learned a lot. The losses still happen. And, bless my husband's heart, if a bird doesn't die, but they're badly injured, they will eventually die or get an infection, get pecked to death by the flock or whatever that is. Like he has to take their life, just for the benefit of the animal and just, dying with dignity and that sort of thing. So it's really hard and it's really sad. I just see how it, hurts his heart, but yeah, he's able to do that. And that's something like as a homesteader, you have to face, sometimes you do have to make these calls and to support the benefit of everything, but it can be really hard. It doesn't make it easy, but it's just all a part of it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. So I want to go into what are some of your go-to herbs. So going back to the herbal conversation, what are some of your go-to herbs for immunity, for stress relief, first aid, all of that from the Sierra region?
You might have to remind me, but we'll start with immunity first. That one's
Okay, great.
easy because I'm in that season. Well, I already mentioned elderberry lots of times, but that's obviously one. Here we have blue elderberry, Sambucus caerulea, and that is definitely one of the best allies. It's great to consume elderberry as a tea or a tincture, as a syrup, just as you start to feel sick, and to take it throughout the beginning part of the sickness to help to shorten the duration. And you can also take it as a preventative, like if you're like, oh, I was around a bunch of sick people. But elderberry is amazing. I won't go on too much of a tangent with that because I could. Other herbs for immunity, I do work with our local Sierra Osha, which is known as Oshala. That is definitely a very important herb for respiratory and lung health. And Osha root is listed as an endangered herb. And most of that grows in like Colorado, New Mexico. So we have a smaller version of that, but there's some very prolific and incredible stands. And I mostly work with it as a honey or a tincture. So I'm actually still taking a pretty small amount, but our Oshala, it's like the mini one, and that's not on the endangered list. So that's an amazing, immune herb. Well, I was going to say yarrow for first aid as well, but I also love yarrow as immune support and respiratory support herb. It's just like one of the best herbs that I really reach for, especially for things like fever. And I use it for myself, for my 14-year-old bonus son, for my husband. It's like consuming the tea will help to naturally support a fever. It's also great to put in the bathtub when you're sick and in tea blends. And the stress relief is a harder one with herbs from this area. So I love this challenge, especially from wild herbs, because I think of, we don't have, for you in the Pacific Northwest, there is lemon balm growing wild, right? Things like that. We don't have as many of those nervous system supporting herbs that are truly wild. But one I think of that I love as an ally, and we'll see what else. I already thought of two great ones. Wild rose is one of my favorites. That's one that's really good, like for the heart. It's also just very like cooling, nourishing to the nervous system, and is like when you need the big hug from grandma. Wild rose. And we do have some wild milky oats that grow in the foothills. So that would probably be my other one of the top allies for nervous system support. Milky oats are incredibly mineral rich and restorative to burnout and nervous system depletion. So yes, the milky oats would probably be the other one. And they make a great pair too, if you want to try those together. Other herbs that are great for skincare or herbal first aid, I already said yarrow, but yarrow really is one of the herbs that I tell people if I was like stranded somewhere, if I could choose 5 herbs, yarrow would 100% be number one because there's so many things that you can use it for, right? It can help to stop bleeding. It can help with a fever, like we talked about, right? It's great for the respiratory system. It's also very, very anti-inflammatory and bitter. So it can be great for like supporting liver and digestive health. And it's also known as a vulnerary herb, which means wound healing. So it's incredible for healing things with the skin internally, like the gut, and externally. I love yarrow. Plantain is probably one that I have to say yes to just because it is so amazing. And violet is another one I love for first aid. And those are actually the 3 herbs I'm like, now that I'm thinking about it, that I put in my first aid salve. I make a first aid salve and it is yarrow, plantain, and violet leaf. And we have a very special violet that grows out here in the valley. And all parts are medicinal, but yeah, both violet and plantain are very nutritive properties. They can be consumed internally, but topically they have incredible wound healing properties. So I love those. And I mean, yeah, I'm like, don't get me started. The list goes on. I also really love pine. I didn't talk about pine, but pine could fit in the category for respiratory. I use a lot of pine, like in my elderberry syrup. Also, pine is a great antiseptic herb. I use a lot of like the resin and the needles and formulas too. So I'll stop there because, I could just keep going.
Oh, I'm like, keep going. I love all these plants, and plantain's so great. It's like the Band-Aid plant, known as the Band-Aid plant. So I love that you put it together with the violet leaves and the yarrow. And I too love yarrow so much. And it's something that grows really well here. A lot of the things you've named also grow well here. So I'm like, actually, I think there's a lot of commonalities, especially when you go up, into the Cascades too. I think it matches more of your environment where you are. And I have to say, like, I am obsessed with Osha. So Oshala, like, yeah, incredible. Like bear root is, what it's called. It's so nutritive, so good for the respiratory system. Like a lot of the indigenous peoples around here, they use that. And when they do sweat or vision questing and sits, that's often something that will, the tea will be served after doing all that hard work. And so it's just like so amazing. And I just use the tiniest amount. Like you said, like a little goes a long way. So a tincture is like the perfect way to use it. But if I'm putting it in a tea, I literally just peel the tiniest pieces and put that in my tea. And that's like enough. I just a couple little peels, and it will, like, the jar will last me so long because you have to be so considerate. Like you said, OSHA is an endangered thing. And so we have to be so mindful with how we use some of these things. And I love that you have like a really great stand near you of Oshala. That's something that I'm looking to around here. I get my Oshala from a local apothecary, but I would love to find like a really solid, healthy stand. But you have to be so mindful, like we talked about at the beginning, taking 10%. It's like you don't know who else is harvesting these wild medicines. Sometimes somebody might have the same spot as you. And so say you're taking 10%, someone else is taking 10%. And like there's this perfect activity I do with my students. It's like called well snips. It's like a made up plant name. And what I do is like have the kids in groups work as a team, and they can you have the ability to harvest up to 3 every time you go in. But like they know that 3, if everybody harvests 3, your whole stand will be depleted. And so the game won't last very long if everybody's harvesting 3, but it's a point system. Like whoever has the most points is kind of the winner too. So like, but kids, it's really cool to see how their gears work, because I've noticed children going, oh, that person took 3. Okay, that person took 2. I won't take it. Actually, I won't take any of this round. And like kids will be mindful of that. I won't take that, or I'll take 1, or like they'll just kind of sacrifice knowing that that's better for the stand of the plant. And so it's actually a really great activity when it comes to like talking about the ethics of harvesting. And that's how I kind of launched my natural resources unit, to talk about how precious these resources can be, and herbs and plants that are part of our natural resources. So we have to be so mindful of how much we're taking and really observing too the environment. Like sometimes I'll notice if I'm going out to harvest nettle, I'll see some people have clipped some. I'll go, is this like a really prolific patch? Which I go to somewhere that's like so abundant, right? That I've gone to for years. But there's a new spot I found. I like to go to Vashon Island. There's like this spot that I live right down the road from it. And it is just, there's just so much there and it's so healthy and it's just not going to be wiped out. There's just no way. And the island is not like a high populated island. So I don't think a lot of people are even in, there's no over harvesting going on there. And it always comes back like just more and more. I feel like every year with the seeds being spread. And I think people are really mindful of who's clipping. But there's a spot that I was told about locally because my husband's like, honey, why do you keep going back to Vashon? Because now that I don't live there, it's like, you keep going to Vashon for the nettle. And I'm like, well, I know the patch. I have a relationship with that patch. I have a relationship with those plants. And I know that it's sustained there. And so he told me, he had a friend tell him about like a local patch that we went out and we started clipping some nettle. But I was noticing it's like, it's not super prolific there. And like the plants, I just noticed like a lot of clippings like along the trail, and I'm just observing and I'm like, I can't take from here much. And so anyways, just another call forward to be mindful when we're going out and harvesting and being aware that there are other people too who might have a similar spot, and that's been like a huge issue too. So how can we start to like, I had a really good conversation with Owen Lindsay, and I'm not sure if you got to listen to that podcast episode, but he talked a lot about, harvesting wild seeds and like starting to cultivate wild seeds and really giving back to like different patches and places and spreading that and not, overtaking. And I think if we can all come with that mindset that we're going to like, how are we going to cultivate too? If we're taking from, how are we going to live in true reciprocity with this land? How can we give back and spread seed or like take out invasive species or whatever that is to support the plants? That's going to be the best thing for the continuation of that thing.
And ultimately, like, here at Mountain Song, I have just phase 1 of the perennial garden, and all of the perennials are all native plants. And then this fall, we're going to plant probably 200 more, and that will include trees and shrubs and more plants. So definitely, like for me, the goal is to be able to rely on working with these wild stands less and less, and being able to cultivate here more of these medicines that already are growing in their natural habitat. And the seed saving, right? And that just brings up another thing that I didn't mention is in the reciprocity is like giving gifts. And a lot of the times I'm giving a gift of the plant of itself to the plant, right? Like bringing dried elderberries from last year and offering those in hopes that more will grow, right? Bringing water, and sometimes that offering is just a song, or maybe it's tears too, because you realize that the patch you've been going to for years and years is now cut down due to deforestation or from over harvesting. And it's just like with the animals, it's like we will experience huge loss in working with these different incredible, beings, animals, natural resources over time. And it's part of the cycle. And sometimes it really brings us to our knees, but it always brings us to also something like in our heart. And there's something big to be learned. And we have so much to learn, like, which I don't even know if I will learn in my lifetime in this body, from the land and the plants and the animals and all of what nature has to share with us. So it's such a gift. And just big, big stuff.
Definitely. Yeah. So we're going to wrap up our conversation here because we're coming up on time. Any advice for people wanting to start a small sustainable herbal practice or home apothecary?
Yes, do it. Don't wait. That's the first advice. What I like to tell everybody is that we're all herbalists. I think there is a lot of stigma around again, like, oh, Mary's a clinical herbalist, or this person has been an herbalist for 20 years. Like, we're all herbalists. When you feel the call, listen to the call, because there's a reason why it's showing up in your life right here and now, or at that specific time. And all of our ancestors have used herbs forever. So that call is just a reawakening of your connection to your ancestors, your connection to the land, your connection to a slower or different way. And yeah, I think just remembering that you can start in any way. It doesn't have to be a big herbal course. It doesn't have to be buying, thousands of dollars worth of herbs. That could be as simple as bringing more culinary herbs into your meals, right? Maybe if you live in an apartment, having like a couple little garden boxes and growing a couple things and drying your own mint so you can have your own mint tea, right, during the winter time. And then for some people, they're going to want to do the course. They're going to want to take the classes. They're going to want to start to buy the herb books, go on hikes, and immerse themselves into nature. So find what's right for you and go at your own pace. But you're all herbalists. And it's all in your blood and your bones. And the world needs more herbalists, whether that's just you making, right, herbs for your family, or you having an offering for your community. I truly believe that it's a beautiful way. And it's changed my life and continues to in many ways. And I say it's my passion and it's my life. It's like, it's not just my work. So I think it's one of those things that if we hold it close, it can, be whatever we want it to be. And it's really just pure bliss and magic when we take a second to pause. Like when I'm in the midst of like making all these things and being a crazy medicine witch in my kitchen, then I'm like, sometimes I'm just like, I get to do this for my job, right? I get to spend my days doing this, and it feels really rewarding. So yes, if you feel the call, go for it. And just like you were saying earlier, Amber, like you can always come back to it, right? It's timeless, right? It's not going to expire. It's not going to go out of style. Like herbalism is always going to be cool. So yeah, just follow your heart and more herbalists are going to heal the world.
For sure. That is for certain. And yeah, it's absolutely our sacred right, to work with these plant allies and these medicines. And I love how you're talking about starting small from growing little mint, having a little garden box on your porch, or, going out to a local farm, working with local herbal farms. You can go to your local apothecary if there is one, and read the books if you wanted. There's so many amazing books and resources out there. And thanks for being another amazing resource for people to look to and come to learn. And yeah, I will link everything in the show notes to how to get in touch with Mary and all of that. And your next big shop release that listeners will actually get to a chance to access is, what are the dates again?
October 13th through the 17th. And yeah, it will include all of these seasonal fall medicines. There's lots of support for immunity and for respiratory health. And I have one really special skincare thing that is launching in October as well. That is a seasonal rose hip balm that's made with wild harvested rose hips and is just like sunshine hydrating nectar for our skin. So that will also be coming in October. Oh, and before I forget, there's a discount code for the listeners. Do we want to tell them about that?
Yes.
Amber will include it in the show notes, but if y'all want to hop on the October shop update or any of the future ones, you can use the code Sacred Rite 15 for 15% off your first order.
Yeah, thanks, Mary, for your generosity, and definitely take her up on that. She's got amazing products, and some of the stuff that you come up with, Mary, so unique, so amazing, just so inspiring to me. So thanks for doing your hard work, and it's so good to tune in with you, sister.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for everything, Amber. Great to be with you today, and thanks for all that showed up and are listening.
Yeah, thanks, sister. Bye. Thank you for walking this path of holistic wellness and mindful living with me. I hope today's discussion planted seeds in the hearts of those that need it most and has inspired you in some way. If you found value in our conversation, please consider subscribing to the Sacred Rite podcast and leaving a review. It really helps this podcast reach more listeners, and I would be so grateful. I would love to connect over social media. My Instagram handle is @sacred.rite. There you can stay up to date on upcoming episodes, current offerings, and small batch releases of our handmade botanical remedies. I will leave any relevant links from today's episode in the show notes. The music in this podcast is from an incredible musician and a dear sister of mine, Satori Key. Be sure to check out her music on all major platforms. Her medicine music is transformative and deeply healing and has truly changed my life. Tune in next time. Until then, nurture your body and soul, and remember, it's your sacred right.